So here we go. Round number 6. James Newman and Marcus Fitzgerald. We got Temur Rhinos and 4-color control. 2 decks, mainstays of Modern over the last year or two, but maybe not in Tier 1 at the moment.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting situation for both of these decks to be in because with the way that a lot of Modern has kind of ebbed and flowed over the last few years, both of these have really had their time to shine and have also kind of fallen a little bit. And suspending this Crashing Footfalls, I mean, if you got it in hand, it just seems like the best thing to start doing, but that's gotta be kind of a rough thing to do. We can already see a Fairy Time Raveler in the hand of Marcus Fitzgerald, so that's gonna potentially end up being a little bit rough, as that is one of the best cards that this 4-color control deck is playing against this, cascading deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Fairy Time Rattler is a nuisance. Also in hand, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, the big version. In fact, quite a few Planeswalkers in Marcus Fitzgerald's deck today, a total of 11.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I also saw the one of copy of Jace the Mind Sculptor, and I just had a moment where I was like, modern players really just be putting one of Jace the Mind Sculptor and going, I can have my Jace the Mind Sculptor as a treat.
Why not? Jace is
Why not?
awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
do you know how many games Jace won between like 2011 and 2017? It's like uncountable.
it is probably a whole lot. And even
Yeah.
still, but like, how many is Jace winning nowadays?
Well, that wasn't the focus of the question I asked, but it's less, I will grant you. Anyway, it is obviously a nice card, but yeah, these Teferis, especially Teferi Time Raveler, is just a trump against the entire Temur Rhinos deck. Turning off Cascade. Here's Gemstone Caverns. Nice to see that. And a Blood Moon. Whoa!
Ooh.
Well, Becky Bell, you know what? You cannot cast Teferi Time Raveler off of 3 mountains.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually pretty big here. Okay. Chalice the Void, though, is nicely going to be able to stop the Crashing Footfalls as it
Mm-hmm.
comes off on the last one. So that's kind of a nice place to end up going.
Yeah, wow. Well, the scope of this game has just changed dramatically with the extra hate card and then the Crashing Footfalls. Here's Fury. All right, that's
Oh,
going to take a chunk out of Ren and 6, and also of importance, Marcus Fitzgerald. Yeah, okay. There's a Solitude, and that's probably the only spell in his hand he can cast.
yeah. This seems like a rough place to be, but like, I guess the light at the end of the tunnel for you is just like, hey, at least I have this Ren 6 in play that's slowly ticking up.
Yeah,
That has to just be, like, all you're thinking about and just being like, "Ooh, okay," so I've been playing a little bit, you know this because we kinda were playing against each other, at the last NRG event. I've been playing quite a bit of the 4-color creativity deck,
mhm.
and, there's a lot of main deck Blood Moon decks right now, certainly on Magic Online, and so, every once in a while, I'll just like be, having a nice little stroll, playing my 4-color creativity deck, trying to cast some Archons of Cruelty, and then I'll get Blood Mooned. And I didn't think that I could possibly go to a deck more dead to Blood Moon than Tron. And Tron really like doesn't like it's kind of like this is annoying, this slows me down a little bit, but we don't really care about it as much. And then I started playing this deck that is absolutely just completely hosed by Blood Moon,
Mhm.
and that might be how Marcus is kind of feeling right now. So this is a moment where I'm you at least have this silver lining to the moment that is this run in 6 slowly ticking up.
Yeah, this is okay. Here's a fire to knock it down to 5 and a discard of a Teferi. And yeah, this game is all right. You show up and immediately you have the weirdest game so far on the day where Blood Moon is locking at one player and Chalice of the Void locking at the other one. So I mean, we're gonna ultimate run 6 with nothing to do?
We have a prismatic ending to do now that I don't think actually works. I'm not
No.
entirely sure how
Well,
that interaction works, but
we
I
don't even
can't
have a
imagine that it does.
no. Yeah, we need so Marcus has 1 planes in the deck for the Leyline Binding that's currently in his hand. That would make it cost 4. Here's a Violent Outburst to avoid discarding, I guess, or to just to get the Crashing Footfalls out of the deck so you don't draw it at some point. Which okay, that is reasonable. Thinning the deck out a little bit, hoping to draw into more Furies, I guess. On an island, all right, all right.
All right, Shardless Agent, finally an attacker.
Yeah, barely survives Ren at 6, but it still does.
Mhm.
And yeah, if
Ooh.
if you're just joining in to watch, thanks for being here. Not every game has gone like this, but here we are. We are in the world of Blood Moon at this point.
I've said that I like watching decks not be able to function on their, like, normal game 1 plan and just
Mhm.
being also, yeah, okay, so I thought the same thing a moment ago when we flipped over this card, so I appreciate that Marcus is also taking a moment to read it. I admittedly also, since it's a newer card, don't exactly know what the name of it is.
Arcane Proxy is what you're talking
Thank
about.
you,
Maybe we can
yeah.
pop that up. This is the new Snapcaster Mage-ish card, which is 2 blue and a 1 on the cheap, but full cost is just 7, which James certainly has 7. So if he draws one of those, he can throw it out there. And I guess start attacking for 4 a turn.
Ren and 6 emblem, here we go.
All right. Shardless Agent now able to actually kill Ren and 6, if that even matters, which I suppose it does. Yep, knock that out of there. Another Shardless Agent. Question from the chat: is Cascade mandatory? Cascade is. However, you do not have to cast the spell that you find.
Mhm.
But at least one argument I can think of for actually casting the spells is because if you feel like this chalice is not leaving play, then drawing Crashing Footfalls isn't any good either. So at least they're getting out of the deck,
Mhm.
which James has gone through twice already. I believe this is the third one and maybe the last Crashing Footfalls that he'll have to worry about. No, he's going to leave that one in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But
I
still,
mean,
a
I
couple
like
beaters
the
now.
decision, yeah, and I like
Yeah.
the decision to go ahead and, like, try to cast the first one, like, see like, I don't know, people talk about chalice checking all the time, but just,
Mhm.
like, getting that kind of out of there, still deciding what exactly the game plan was gonna be, maybe looking through your own deck to see if there is a way to get through chalice as well, and just, like, kind of reminding yourself, like, "Oh, maybe there is a time where I will draw a Brazen Borrower and be able to petty theft this back to hand, and then I could kinda go into this Crashing Footfalls," but that was one of the problems that we discussed possibly happening in drawing the Crashing Footfalls, so going to go into suspend, but then this Fury is gonna hopefully start to do chunks of life totals here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a real clock now. This is 10 coming across. Marcus is down to 3. I guess a plane's still. I mean, Leyline Binding's still going to cost 4 mana, and that's it. It's not there. And Blood Moon, despite there being some hiccups along the way and a lot of steps to go through, Blood Moon combined with Shardless Agent beats takes it down. And James Newman's up a game.
Very nicely done there to start off for James. And yeah, a lot of it really just coming down to having that blood moon and being
Mhm.
able to say that, like, sure, it's going to take me a while to do things, but I know that you're not going to be able to do a larger percent of your deck than me. So I might as well just go for it. And it ends up working in James' favor. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some deck lists and see what is potentially going to change about these decks as we go into game number 2.
Well, certainly, I mean, uh, fetching triomes and everything is great, but when you know you're up against Blood Moon, there may be a differing a priority on what lands get fetched out from Marcus Fitzgerald with those 2 islands and 1 plains jumping up a few rungs. Also, white mana on tap for Leyline Binding is going to play a role and be vital. I mean, you'd think I have counter magic, I have Leyline Binding, I'm not going to die to Blood Moon, but it's going to happen sometimes, and we saw it there. And you can see the deck list here: Planeswalkers, couple Omnaths, some Pitchcast Incarnations. Now, do we have any sideboard cards that? Do we have any magical sideboard cards that are good against both Cascade and Blood Moon? Probably not.
Yeah, it doesn't really look like it. It looks like we've got something like those Hallowed Moonlights that we could be bringing in. The
Sure.
Boseijus could be helpful at least making sure that we're able to float some mana to get rid of a Blood Moon if we are anticipating that. We could also just be bringing in things like Dovin's Vetoes to
Mhm.
be able to say absolutely not to those things that are kind of
Right.
hosing us.
Yeah.
So we have a little bit of options, but it is definitely kind of a little bit of a rough situation if a Blood Moon is able to resolve once again.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and look at James Newman Temur Rhinos deck. 3 Blood Moons and a 4th one in the board. So no accident that was available there. You can see the rest of the list there. So this is something where, like, okay, it took a while, and it looked a little dicey there as far as James being able to finish off the game with a Blood Moon. But if you're really familiar with the deck and the matchup, he may have just known, listen, if I land this Blood Moon and my opponent is stuck without a basic, it doesn't matter how grimy it looks, I'll win eventually. And that is exactly what happened there. So it looks like we're watching thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? But he may have known, my opponent's not going to have very many basics. If I get this into play, nothing else matters. Chalice doesn't matter. And yeah, takes it down.
Yeah, very nice heads up play, and I imagine that we would probably be eyeing this fourth Blood Moon as well. This is a pretty hefty sideboard here. 4 Force of Vigor, 4 Mystical Dispute, 4 Endurance. Like, the decisions about what could possibly be wanted seem to be pretty straightforward here, which I am actually kind of inclined to like, as well as that Gemstone Cavern just to be a nice little leg up in some situations as well. We got one in the sideboard, one in the main. So some interesting decisions here for James, but I think that mostly that Blood Moon going to be a winner and something that you're looking to get this time around. And Marcus is going to try and play around it, I'd bet.
Yeah, I would think. All right, so Triome on the board, turn 1 here. And yeah, the Arcane Proxy is interesting. I mean, there are some utility cards maybe they can hit, but really it's, 3 mana recast the Footfalls that's already in the graveyard. That's pretty neat. So we'll see. Also, which would have been relevant this last game, potentially a 7 mana 4 power creature with no other text. That would have helped also.
Absolutely true. And Marcus choosing not to go for basics and is just going to continue to kind of play a very similar game plan to the first game, getting enough mana to play this Wrenn and 6 and just get those fetches back from the graveyard. Does also have 4 colors of mana available, so we could be casting some of those enchantments for only 2 mana should we choose.
All right, 4 colors and 2 lands for now, sure, but I'm willing to bet that the next fetch land finds a basic, and probably the one after that too. I'm not going to lose 2 games of Blood Moon in a row. Come on now.
What? People don't enjoy losing to Blood Moon?
I don't think people enjoy losing at all, pretty much. But yeah, certainly they don't like getting locked out of existence.
What an astute observation.
I put these Teferis in my deck to cast them, not to discard them to hand size.
Very, very fair. And Wrenn and 6 ticking up once again, as you mentioned. Basic added to the board for Marcus. So slowly going to try and amass a little bit of a way to fight back against Blood Moon should it come into play this time around. But I don't believe it's in James's hand this time.
Well, is it possible that even as Petty Theft is going to bounce, and how many cards are going to be in? Yeah. So we're going to slow down here because Marcus actually has to discard a card. Scalding Tarn. And James does have a Force of Negation in hand, so potentially hard casting on whatever Planeswalker might attempt to get into play this turn.
Yeah, I actually also just like, even if you didn't have the Force of Negation, it's a little bit scary there for James. I feel like it almost kind of telegraphs that you don't have the Blood Moon because you're a little bit more worried about something like a Wrenn and 6 coming into play, but instead, just the Brazen Borrower. Nice flash availability to get into play and also start doing some attacking. And considering how much fetching and shocking both of these decks honestly do, already being able to put Marcus to 13 is no slouch here for this fairy.
Yeah, and James Newman here, with the Petty Theft on the Wrenn and 6, and then Marcus held up mana. And the Brazen Borrower comes in, and Marcus just passed the turn cycle with his mana unspent. So that's a big win for James Newman. Sometimes bouncing something at, even if a card parity isn't a great play, but when your opponent doesn't redeploy, it really buys you some time here. Now we'll see if Marcus spends the rest of the mana before untapping, but it looks like no.
Yeah, it's hard. It seems like Marcus is really hoping to just continue to hold up mana to answer something like a Blood Moon with a counterspell if it were to come into play. And as a result is just kind of gonna take a few hits from this
Mhm.
Brazen Borrower, unfortunately.
Yeah. Does find a Flooded Strand here. So now able to fetch a Plains, and that is the combination of, well, probably the white man is more important than blue as far as protecting from Blood Moon that's already in play. But having both means that the fairies are all active. And now there's really no mana worries to fear. And yeah, and I mean, no guarantee that James Newman even kept the Blood Moons in going second, as they are much more effective going first. Fine. If we see one, I guess we'll find out on a cascade whether they're actually in there or not.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought process. I have to believe that they're still so powerful that they're probably worth keeping in.
Mhm.
But Leyline Binding is going to take out Brazen Borrower here. Save Marcus a little bit of a life total. So we're able to search for potentially that Plains. Yep, going to join those nice John Avon lands on the field.
So not too much going on in the game now. Both players at 12. The onus on James here, I feel, to kind of apply more pressure, even though his deck. I mean, we're post board. He's probably boarded in his Mystical Disputes, which Marcus can kind of negate just by slow playing for several more turns.
Yeah, and it's got to be really scary to watch your control opponent continue to, even though they haven't redeployed this Wrenn and 6 that is in their hand, like hit these land drops and still be saying, I'm not feeling safe enough to play this 2-mana spell. Go.
Yeah.
Like, that's just got to be kind of like terrifying as somebody who wants to get the game over quickly or is playing a deck that is a little bit more on the axis of trying to end the game fast.
Okay, well, we're going to have an action here. I wonder if this is just draw 2 with Archmage Charm. Yeah, on second thought, that is what it is. James does has his Crashing Footfalls at the top of the screen ticking down. It's down to 2. And is this going to bait something out of James here? It looks like the answer is yes. Force of Negation is going to go after the Archmage's Charm.
In response to that, we will counterspell, to which we'll get Mystical Disputed. So not drawing any cards for Marcus, but getting to go to Marcus's turn. Now we have this Teferi that could potentially just try to come down and be completely undisputed here. But there is another dispute in hand. So speaking of being disputed.
Yeah, nice work here for James Newman. Yeah, Marcus Fitzgerald kind of hoping the path was open at the end step there with the 2 spells cast, but no, the answer is not. That is not the case. And James Newman gets to use 2 Mystical Disputes at a point where they were on the verge of running into trouble of not being effective anymore. Just to fire off both, keep the fairy off the board, and now Marcus is the one that's tapped down aside from one land, but it's a Plains, which I guess in his deck is actually represents a lot with Leyline Binding.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting back and forth too, because it felt like from Marcus's standpoint, you're stoked if your opponent is trying to kind of go back and forth and counter your draw spell. And then all of a sudden being like, okay, this has to mean that the door is open. And then James still having something. So James maybe kind of doing a little bit of back and forth mind games there, as we do see that the Blood Moon is still in the deck, or at least 1 copy, as we cascade with a Violent Outburst into a Crashing Footfalls, with the other one on the suspend down only to 1.
So what are we thinking about Blood Moon? Now we know there's 3 mana and 1 in the board. Is I wonder if this is a matchup where, okay, maybe you want to play 1 Blood Moon, maybe 2, or are you all in on Blood Moons here? I don't know, but I think you could argue either way.
Yeah, I think it's hard because I think initially I probably would have gone full hard on getting 4 Blood Moons against pretty much any 4-color control deck.
Mhm.
But I think that Marcus playing 2 islands, 1 plains, I'm not sure exactly what the norm for this deck is, as it's not a deck that I myself have played a whole lot. Okay. Using an Archmage's Charm to say yoink to one of those rhinos, give
Yeah.
Marcus a little bit of a defensive power there. Um, so it's interesting to see just how many basics this 4-color deck is actually playing, and then trying to make the decision of, is Blood Moon something that I actually think would be useful, as Fury comes in, takes care of that rhino that Marcus stole from James, and then James is able to get across for some damage here, likely, unless Marcus has something to say about it in a sec.
He does have a Solitude in hand, which is fine, but Solitude and they run at 6. I go back 2 or 3 turns, and I thought Marcus was looking pretty good this game. And now I believe his hand is running 6 and nothing else. So unless there's a good draw here, James is looking primed to do a lot of damage. A counterspell is not going to do it. And let's see. Maybe I misread the hand. Okay, there is Kaheera, and that does make the Solitude better. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Leaving
that at
counterspell
least
mana
allows for a
up.
trade. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nice turn. Taking advantage of the companion. So more than I expected that turn to consist of. And now James still can't feel too bad about his position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quite a few pieces in play, and hoping to likely have something like a petty theft to at least make the attack a little bit more clear,
Sure.
or some form of removal spell to kind of have that same effect. Unfortunately, now we've drawn the Blood Moon,
Oh,
which I guess would stop counterspell mana
yeah.
or would eat up a counterspell. So probably the thing that you would like to start with. I'm
Okay,
not sure why we've tapped 6 mana for it,
so
but
James is
Oh,
playing extra mana.
floating. Okay,
Yeah, because he's going to lose access to.
that makes sense. Okay.
Although if Marcus floated to also, then this is still going to get countered. Taking a check to see where the rest of these Crashing Footfalls are. Still more in there. Let's keep going.
There's got to be. There's no way you take out Crashing Footfalls, right? Unless you were sideboarding into something different, but they're just hiding out towards the bottom.
All right, so there is the counterspell off of floated mana. So it may look like, well, James could have waited and then cast that second main, but James was constrained by the Blood Moon just the same as Marcus was. So that was really the only way to do it.
Yeah.
The attack comes in here, though, and this is still, a pretty solid attack. Marcus is, able to make some inroads here, but he's, let's see. So Solitude can block, and Marcus will gain 4 because of lifelink. So it'll be 11.
Yeah, and at least trade with a Rhino, which
Mm-hmm.
I think has to be, considering that both players are like completely tapped out. I'm imagining that is the best direction that we could possibly go, and then just trying to eat up as much damage as possible by having Kaheera block Fury.
Mm-hmm.
So it ends up with ending up at the same amount of life.
Right. Yeah. So no net there. Oh, no, actually 1 damage to trample over, I guess. Over Kaheera. So maybe 1 damage total, and Marcus still facing down a lethal attack next turn.
Yeah, Marcus making the
That's
same
it.
play of knocking the top of the deck before drawing that final card, and isn't able to hold it together. The Temur Rhinos player with a slew of counter spells really being the pivot point of that game and allowing for James to lock that one up.
Yeah. That was nicely done there. I do want to acknowledge the chat just because I feel like it's good when there's a rules thing to acknowledge that yes, they did catch this. that on that last interaction, the Kaheera died to the double strike portion of combat, or the first strike portion. So the Rhino they got blocked by Solitude should not have died, as the blocking Solitude had its power reduced before regular damage. So chat, you are correct about that. However, it had obviously very little impact, which is fortunate. And the match is decided in favor of James Newman regardless. Okay, backup match ready to go. James Newman advances to 5-1. Marcus Fitzgerald at 4-2. Who we got for the backup? We got Gabriel Nicholas and we got Ross Merriam at 5-0. All right. Ross Merriam we saw this morning, expertly piloting Jeskai Breach. And here, turn one Emery is not too bad.
Yeah, usually a pretty good play for the Jeskai Breach deck, and is going to take a look at the card that will be drawn by Gabriel. And it's worth mentioning that Is It Murktide is actually the most represented deck at this tournament in Louisville today. So for those of you interested as to what the most popular deck of choice was, Gabriel's deck is the most represented.
All right, I'm going to follow up with more questions about the metagame later, but right now, as this game's kicking off and as Emery dies, notable that Ross had a nice start there with throwing Emery. However, Ross, I believe, has one card in hand, so I believe there's a mold of 5.
Ooh, I mean, if you get a good start like that, I guess you're kind of hoping that your opponent mulled to 5 to get it, but
Sure.
unfortunate dismantling here from that Unholy Heat as the Emery goes to the bin, and now this Mox Amber is going to be left a little bit sad and stranded.
Yes, indeed. All right, Ragavan here. There is Unholy Heat in Ross's hand, so that can be picked off. And he chooses maybe to play around Spell Pierce by waiting until he untaps to cast it. And Gabriel,
so many more cards in hand for Gabriel.
It is a big difference, yeah. But Ross has more mana in play. He has more permanents in play.
That's true. One of them a mana rock that can't generate mana currently. So
well, I mean, you can't have everything. I mean, just wait a while. It'll get there.
Certainly fair. The Jeskai Breach deck certainly has a way of kind of taking you by surprise, and I'm sure Gabriel has to recognize that as well. As Murktide going to come into play and start to hopefully take out some of this dead silence with some damage.
Yeah, it's not going to take too long. How big are we looking at here? Let's see. Okay, 5/5. Ross actually managed to still be at 20. Really? Well, we're fetching at least once here, but yeah. So 4 swings were required. That's going to take a while. But Gabriel Nicholas now with the clock and more tools in hand. So Ross Merriam, capable player as he is, going to be put to a real test here.
Yeah, we're going to start knocking the top of the deck like we just seen our main match do.
All right, 4 mana. I mean, 4 mana is important because that's how much it costs to play Honorable Breach and Grinding Station.
We do have an artifact in hand, but I do unfortunately think that it looks to me like a Mox Amber. Urza Saga, not the worst thing in the world. It's at least a big piece of action, but unfortunately when the action on your opponent's side is a flying 5/5, you'd maybe hope for something a little different.
Yeah. Dragons are never easy to face. All right, Iteration. That's a real card. See if Ross can get something going here.
As opposed to all of the fake cards that Ross has been playing previously.
Well, I don't know. You said this Mox Amber is pretty worthless. I mean, yeah, it's basically a fake card at this point.
Yeah.
All right, Counterspell is going to pick off the Expressive Iteration. No Delirium yet, so Dragon Chandler can't attack in over the potential construct, which we do see Ross make. I guess, okay, there's a Breach. Saga, if Ether Spellbomb is available in the deck still, can reset this Murktide and buy Ross some time, and there we do see that. This isn't over yet.
Yeah, now that we're starting to amass some of these constructs as well, they're also able to do a little bit of damage right back if we choose. I mean, 3 life is a little bit rough, but these constructs wouldn't be able to block this Darcy if it gets flying in a little bit anyway. So,
Right.
I mean, at a certain point, we might as well just be attacking with them. We believe that one of the cards remaining in Ross's hand is another copy of Mox Amber, so does go attacking with the first construct that is not summoning sick, and gonna have a fetch in response from Gabriel and see if there is a way to stop this 4/4 artifact creature.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's. I guess there's not an Unholy Heat. Well, at least there's no. It's not.
There's no delirium for it.
I mean, I guess there could be a speculative and hope you mill over on the Dragon Shadow. It's actually
Oh,
Otawara. So we've seen Otawara play a significant role a couple times today now. That won't help Gabriel win any faster. I guess they'll keep him alive though. But yeah, Ross being at 3, dead to a number of, well, specifically a lightning bolt.
Expressive Iteration, going to try and see if we can enable yet another flying attacker.
Ross also just dead to Delirium without a bolt, which I don't believe he has, or only he doesn't have it. Okay, so Aether Spellbomb can bounce one of the flying attackers, but not both. So Gabriel Nicholas will be up game 1 here. Let's go ahead and bring out the deck list and see what the players have to work with. So Ross Merriam, Jeskai Breach, we saw him, I believe, round 1 this morning. And if you're interested in hearing some of his thoughts on the deck, or just the way that a very knowledgeable, very experienced player talks about his deck, go back and watch the interview we did after the round. He knows his stuff. So here is the list. Pretty stock at this point. Ross being one of the ones has gotten it to that point.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see which people also are deciding to not play something like Hall of Heliod's Generosity and kind of the movements to and from something like that. And especially like in the Jeskai versions where it was a little more common, still seeing people kind of in this push and pull between whether that is the right call or not.
Okay, yeah. Answers to Murktide Regent. I mean, there is, let's see. Well, I guess just a Fairy Time Rattler. That's an easy way to deal with it. And also a solid card in the matchup. We know of the Aether Spellbomb that can be tutored up. Other than that, you're kind of just dealing with it. I mean, there's a Prismatic Ending. That's not going to deal with Murktide Regent in any reality.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting sideboard. I'm kind of mostly at the point where I'm sure Ross knows this deck much better than I, and it's one thing when you see a deck list and a sideboard that is full of 4-ofs. You're like, okay, it's very clear that like this is a tool that you want in some matchups because it just makes things so much easier. When you're playing so many like 1-ofs like Ross is in the sideboard, I think it gets a lot harder past the few that are with the purpose of being tutored up from Urza's Saga.
Sure. No, it does. As we should move over there. Let's look at Gabriel Nicholas deck list before the players get started for game number 2. But certainly having big chunks, 4-ofs in sideboards, I mean, yeah, it's brute force. And having a bunch of singletons and 2-ofs, it's more elegant. Maybe you're more picking and choosing. Your cards are overlapping. You're making more precise adjustments. Like Ross said, he wanted something for the mirror. So he's playing 1 Drannith Magistrate. He's not overdoing it, but he's got 1 in there, whereas before he had none. So just minor changes here and there. Gabriel Nicholas is in Murktide. So we talked about this Jeskai Breach deck being hard to sideboard against because you can attack it in many different ways. Dress Down seems like an obvious winner because of the interaction with Urza Saga, which is just very difficult to deal with otherwise, and very easy to deal with Dress Down.
Extremely. And things like Unlicensed Hearse are going to be really good at picking off some of the important pieces of combos that get kind of milled over, as well as just keeping off Delirium so that Unholy Heat isn't able to take out some of your more important creatures that you're trying to deal damage with.
Sure. Okay, let's see how game 2 plays out. Ross Marion probably hoping to keep more than 5 cards this time. I mean, you're always hoping, right?
Aren't we all? Yeah, I was going to say. Most certainly all of us, as we can take a look at Gabriel's hand as well and see that there is an unlicensed hearse in the opening hand here.
Hmm.
And Ross mulling to 6, but hopefully a 6 that is going to be able to do quite a bit of good for Ross. We saw that 5 being quite a good start, unfortunately, just got dismantled by a
Yeah.
full 7 keep from Gabriel.
Gabriel Nicholas appears to have quite a few land in hand. So
I
Frost
mean,
can hopefully.
it's always hard if
I know.
you are in a sideboard game and you, like, have a really good sideboard card and then the rest of your hand is just kinda, like, meh. Like,
Hmm.
how do you go about deciding that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe there is no easy way to do it. You just hope you can ride out the early turns. Hope your opponent doesn't have a good start with something like a Ragavan that connects here. At least it flips over a inconsequential Fiery Islet. Um, Ross with no blue lands in place so far, but does have a treasure, and that's good enough for a Ledger Shredder to make it in.
Gonna search for a land for Gabriel here, and I don't know, both of these creatures actually gotta be quite a nice start for Ross because they
Hmm.
are basically the 2 ways that this Just Guy Breach deck is able to say, "Yeah, if you put in a bunch of hate cards, like, here are my things that don't care about your hate cards."
Right, that's true. This is kind of just the even though I was going to describe this is the honest approach from Ross Merriam's deck, but I mean these creatures are pretty busted. But I still think it's a fair description based on what the deck's capable of. Gabriel Nicholas here draws a bauble, has a hearse, so he can at least get on the board with something, but it's not a blocker. Um, Keeps the card on top, it looks like. So maybe, no, I'm taking that back. Going to shuffle away. And if hearse is the play and just another turn's going to connect here.
Yeah, that seems like a little bit of a rough spot
Yeah.
for Gabriel actually to be in and
Hmm.
maybe does speak to one of those difficult situations where you are saying, "I have this really good sideboard card, but sometimes my opponent is just gonna draw Ledger Shredder and Ragavan, and they don't care about unlicensed Hearse."
Right. Well, if it's hearse, okay. We'll see if that's the case or if it's something potentially better. There's iteration in hand. I don't imagine we're casting that here. It's actually going to be nothing. So maybe there is a removal spell, or maybe there's just the hope of a removal spell on top of the deck. We shall see.
Yeah, something like that, or hopefully a counterspell, but it seems like you would be really scared. It seems like it would be really difficult to hope for a counterspell
Hmm.
or have something like that in hand, and then also just be staring down the second chapter of Urza's Saga where you're just like, "Oh, well, obviously that's gonna be the play that my opponent wants to make. So now I just have to hope for some reason that that won't be it."
Hmm.
As, Ledger Shredder gets flipped over off the top of Gabriel's deck, and Ross goes, "Oh, that's a good card. So good that I'm playing it too. I'll take
Yeah.
another one."
Addressing the chat, yes. Stoneway is correct that the Fiery Islet in the graveyard should not be there. That was hit by Ragavan, so should actually be in exile. However, this is a time shifted match, so there's nothing we can do about it. Maybe it'll get sorted out at some point. Maybe it won't. Okay, here is the iteration. And yeah, Gabriel is just. It's not enough.
Yeah, it's a awkward case of the blues here where we just kept the wrong type of hand against what Ross is functioning on. It's just a completely different axis right now, and with both of these ledger shredders in play that are just gonna stick around and kind of go for beats in the air, we just don't have a ton of options, and hopefully this Unholy Heat's gonna be able to save a little bit, but it just seems like a rough spot to be in for Gabriel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one Unholy Heat is not close to covering the number of assignments that he has to remove right now. He needs Brotherhood's End maybe or something, except that's going to be, we're too late for that. And it's also almost certainly not boarded in.
Mhm. We need Hour of Devastation.
Yes, that would do. All right. Emery gets picked off. The two Ledger Shredders both grow. And Gabriel Nicholas has one more turn to do something of relevance.
Yeah, unfortunately, that Unholy Heat not able to do 6 damage because we only had 3 different card types in the graveyard, so forced to just try and pick off Emery and say, hopefully you have to get there with damage, but that damage is amassing at a steady pace here.
Yes, it is. Yeah, we may well be looking at a game 3 here. These players both 5-0. 8 rounds of Swiss today, so likely if the players, whoever wins, may have the option for a double draw, depending on whether they want to play for seeding or they're comfortable being in the mid to bottom half of the top 8.
Mhm. Do you think that's a signature on that hollowed fountain, or do you think it says, like, MP?
Huh. I mean, I'll present a third option. Is it
Okay.
possible that's whatever the unique Grand Prix stamp was for
Oh,
some
that would be
weekend?
really cool, actually.
Because it is, I mean, Grand Prix stamps, I mean,
Are
that's about the
usually in
right
that spot.
size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that answer. I
I
can't really
mean,
tell what it says,
I have
but
no idea, but maybe is it a butterfly?
I don't know. I thought it kinda looked like an MP or an HP.
Yeah, it could be. If it turns out it's a butterfly, though, I'm gonna hold it over you for the rest of your life.
I'll accept it. 'Cause I like your answer the most as well, so I'm honestly okay with it. Darcy has joined the fight and, is slightly disadvantaged in it.
Yes. Okay, so we've got Gabriel still at 13, is that right? All right. I didn't think so. I thought it was less than that. All right. So a bolt plus the impending attack is going to finish up that game. And we are going to see a game number 3 between Ross Mary and Gabriel Nicholas here.
What an interesting way for both of these games to have gone. Like, one was just like an absolutely breakneck start for Ross that just got kind of dismantled, which is something that you would kind of expect for the Is It Murktide to do deck to do because it's playing like on Holy Heats, it's playing Lightning Bolts. So if you just have like one creature to try and hold your deck together, that like is going to be a difficult time. And then it's also playing counter spells to stop you from kind of rebuilding things. And so it just didn't end up going the right way for Ross in game number 1, and then game number 2 is just like, "Okay, fine. Like, I'll play it your way. I'll play Ragavan. I'll play Ledger Shredder." Like, those are the same cards that Gabriel is playing. So, let's go into game number 3 and see how it starts to really shake up and if Ross wins playing fair Magic again.
Okay. So we are underway. Looks like we've got full hand for Ross maybe for the first time in the match.
And that
Gabriel with at least one sideboard in hand with the Mystical Dispute and no plays as of yet. So not on the board early, but that's not a problem.
Okay, so this Spire Bluff Canal also looks like it has a PT stamp. So,
Oh.
Ross and this one definitely looks like a PT stamp to me, so that might just be something that Ross has collected or likes about having on cards, which I can get behind that. I think that's a cool little swag to have to cards.
No, I agree. If you're playing cards that you have come from your own, called exclusive event drafts, that is a very cool way of pimping out a deck.
And a Ragavan, not exactly where you would like to see a Ragavan coming in on turn number 3 instead of turn number 1, gets unholy heated by Ross. And then the follow-up is going to just to be get myself enough artifacts that this Emery only costs me 1, but as a result, easily mystically disputed.
All right, a flurry of actions, and then a land after all that. Ball will draw incoming. Gabriel with good stuff in hand too. Express Federation, Fury, and finding more good things.
Yeah, deciding where we want those iteration cards to go.
Well, Murktide's looks like you're sliding right into play.
Yeah, we didn't even put in an exile. We're playing it.
All right, so how big is this going to be? It looks like 3 instants of sorceries.
Yeah, I agree. The iteration to consider and dispute.
All right, well, let's see. Looking over Ross Merriam's graveyard, we see land, Unholy Heat, Emery, Bauble. So there is Delirium. So another Unholy Heat would be enough to take down this Murktide. And if it's Unholy Heat plus a land to make a construct, well, that's a decent setup for Mr. Merriam here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looks like that is potentially going to be the play. Just trying to decide what order we want to do things in, and nicely noting that if we play the Ledger Shredder first, we will get to connive. So big heads up play coming there from Ross.
All right, and then adds his third color to the board. Or I guess the fourth color. Is it blue, white, red plus Urza Saga? Is that kind of a color? I mean,
Urza Saga is its own color in Magic.
I mean, it does a lot in this deck.
That's true. I'm kind of sure. I'm kind of in for it. It's colorless mana too,
Yeah,
so
that's a color. I need a petition that Sundering Titan should be allowed to kill Urza Saga because it's its own color.
I feel like that would maybe go a lot crazier in Tron matchups if Sundering Titan could kill colorless generating lands.
Yeah, okay, maybe it's a little unreasonable. All right, Fury takes down Ledger Shredder here, allowing Gabriel to remove Ross's board presence while simultaneously putting a fairly significant clock on the board. But Gabriel's tapped out here, and with a growing graveyard and grinding station in play, there's always the risk of getting just breach comboed out of existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either Spellbomb pick up here for Ross off of this Urza Saga. It's an interesting one, but followed up with the Underworld Breach, so we might actually be witnessing what you just mentioned and getting breached out of existence, but we don't have too many cards in our graveyard to start with, but fear not, Grinding Station is in play, so easily able to fix that up. And Ross says, my graveyard is my hand now.
Yeah. So going to iterate through casting and sacrificing baubles. Looking for a Mox potentially. There is a Mox. So now Ross can continue to do the exact same thing, except each time he'll generate a blue mana, and can deplete the deck and then cast Thassa's Oracle with the mana that's being generated.
I don't even think we've seen the Thassa's Oracle yet. It's like almost the bottom card of the library, actually.
I mean, maybe he boarded it out. Sure. Possible. All right, but he does find it. And Ross Merriam does pick up this match, advancing to 6-0. And now he's a real threat to take down this event.
Yep, indeed. And if you're looking to be a threat as well, hit that follow button. I don't know why that would make you a threat. It sounded kind of cool to say in the moment. So
they need to want to be part of the team, and they should follow us.
Well, no. Okay. If you follow
justify,
us,
explain, please.
Okay. I'll justify it after we come back from break. Give a little bit of time for us to reset and get ready to bring you.
Give you some time to think of a good, good explanation for yourself. All right, we'll be back.